Today we're going to be showing you how to install a loaded strut assembly. In this video we'll install these Duralast loaded strut assemblies in the 2011 Ford F150 4x4. We're going to install shocks in the rear for a complete suspension job. With the loaded strut assembly, you don't have to take the assembly apart to get to the strut. Instead of taking an old assembly out, then removing just the spring from the strut, you get to put in this whole new assembly. That's a new strut mount, insulator, dust boot, new coil spring, and the strut itself. In this loaded strut assembly, that's all in one piece. It's a faster, safer, and easier install to improve your ride control. You can do this job safely at home with hand tools. For this job, you'll need a 1 1/16 combo wrench, a 7/8 combo wrench, a breaker bar, a large ratchet, a 10mm combo wrench, a 3/8 socket with a ratchet, a torque wrench. You can borrow this at AutoZone through Loan-A-Tool, a pair of pliers, a 13/16 combo wrench, a mallet, a screwdriver, an adjustable wrench, a 30mm deep socket. You can also borrow this from Loan-A-Tool, a 21mm socket, a 15mm socket, and some safety gloves and goggles. You may also want to pick up some rust penetrant like PB Blaster. We'll also need a hydraulic jack and some jack stands. Since this is a heavy truck, we're using 6-ton jack stands. Use a hydraulic jack to raise the vehicle slightly. Refer to your owner's manual for the correct position to jack the car. Break the lug nuts before raising the wheel completely. Raise the wheel with the jack, then insert a jack stand at a secure area of the vehicle's frame. Remove the lug nuts and the wheel. Use a screwdriver or pliers to remove the clip and free the brake line from the brake line bracket. Now the line can move freely and won't get damaged during installation. You may want to turn the spindle to access the strut more easily. Spray rust penetrant on the threads of the upper control arm ball joint and outer tie rod to allow nuts to be removed easier. Now remove the outer tie rod nut. You may need a hammer to get this loose. Loosen and remove the lower strut nut. Leave the bolt in for now. Loosen and remove the 3 upper strut mount nuts. They are the nuts that line the outside, not the one in the middle. Place the jack under the lower control arm to provide some support. Remove the upper control arm nut. You may need a mallet to separate the upper control arm from the spindle. Make sure you only hit the spindle. Remove the jack to access the strut. Remove the lower strut bolt. Remove the sway bar bushing nuts. This will allow more movement of the lower control arm so that the strut can come out more easily. Now remove the strut. Pull it out of the lower pocket and slide the top out. Line up the top of the assembly and install it to match the original assembly. Once it's lined up, install 1 nut to hold the strut in place. This will allow more movement to put the bottom of the assembly in the lower pocket. Install the other 2 top strut nuts and tighten. Use the jack to help align the lower control arm and install the lower strut bolt. You may need a little help from the mallet to get the bolt all the way in. Install the nut on the lower bolt and tighten. Reinstall the upper control arm joint to the spindle. Reinstall the nuts on the lower sway bar bushing. Lower the jack from the lower control arm. Tighten the lower strut nut. The proper torque is 350 foot-pounds, but if you don't have a torque wrench available, AutoZone has one in the Loan-A-Tool program. If you tighten it extremely tight with a breaker bar, it should be sufficient. Reattach the outer tie rod to the knuckle. Reattach the brake clip on the brake line. This may take a little bit of extra effort to get the clip on. Attach the tire and slightly tighten the nuts. Jack up the vehicle, remove the jack stands, and lower it until it's touching the ground. Lower the vehicle completely, then tighten the lug nuts in a star pattern to 150 foot-pounds of torque. You'll want to repeat this process on the other side and then move to the rear. Break the lug nuts, jack up the vehicle, and apply the stands. Remove the lug nuts and the wheel. You can see the shock here is held in place by only 2 bolts, one at the top and one at the bottom. Remove the upper bolt first, and then the lower bolt. Once the bolts and shocks are removed, install the new shock. Fit the new shock into the top mount, then install the top bolt and nut to hold the shock in place. Fit the bottom of the shock into the bottom mount. You may have to compress it to make it fit. When it's lined up, Slide in the bottom bolt and install the bottom nut. Tighten the top nut. Tighten the bottom nut. Reinstall the wheel, then repeat on the other side, and you're done.